And hello, everybody, and welcome to the Weekday Warriors of Wrestling for being recorded on Sunday, October, I think 11th. I don't know. The days run together, but that's probably it. And so we'll probably see this either for your Monday morning or your late Sunday night, depending on when you get on this. I'm Erik Clancy alongside Patrick Kelley. I want to thank everybody for always, viewing with us. We appreciate the comments. Just remember to like and subscribe, share. All that stuff helps us, and we really appreciate it. Let's jump right in. We've got WWE, we've got NXT, we've got AEW. We got a lot of stuff. So why don't we start, Pat? 2 nights ago was the first part of the Smackdown draft. I'm sorry, the WWE draft for Raw and Smackdown. And there was, I think it was similar to last year when they had the 2 pools, and on Friday, you have a pool of people that you can pick from, and it went Raw, SmackDown, Raw, SmackDown, Raw. The idea being that Raw is a 3-hour show and SmackDown's a 2-hour show, so that's how it goes. So it was similar to last year, which a part of me appreciates consistency. I mean, like, Vince always I don't know if he always wonders, but like, people are like, why don't people take the draft seriously? And my answer to that is always like, you can't, like, it's not an institution if it changes like every single time. Like, it used to be like Vince would walk out like in April and he'd be like, we're gonna shake things up with a good old draft lottery. And it wasn't a draft lottery. First of all, I don't know what a freaking draft lottery is, but it wasn't. It was just like people would fight and then picks would happen and then they'd come and nothing made any sense and like whatever. And now it's actually closer to like probably what it should be. And that's like, hey, you have like quote unquote players, and you are looking to make your show the best by getting the best athletes and the people that are the biggest stars and can win the most, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The thing that I hated last year was how stupid the fucking war rooms were. Like, they had these dumb war rooms. First of all, the Fox robot was in one, and secondly, it was like these things could be cool. Like let's say somebody picks like Roman Reigns with the first pick, and like then SmackDown gets Drew McIntyre. I know it happened the other way around, but let's just say that happened. And then, like, I don't know, you could see the war room like getting excited that like, oh, we got Drew McIntyre. Like, obviously they were going to pick one of the champions, but believe it or not, on our board, Drew McIntyre was number 1. So we're really happy it came down the way it did. Like, that makes sense. But when you draft Natalya and everybody's excited, like, first of all, number 1, why are you cheering as the pick comes in? You've already made the selection. So it's not like you're shocked by this result. You've selected it. Nobody goes after nobody goes to the war room of like the Jets after they select like whoever, and then they're like, yeah, we got this pick. We're surprised by this.
Are the Jets ever excited about their picks though?
We shockingly, yes. We're always excited. By the way, I wish you Giants the best of luck against the Cowboys today. I hope you guys pull off such a win and you get back in that winning column and get back in the winning ways, Patrick. I just hope you do so well today.
I do too, but I'm not, I don't know. This isn't the Giant season for miracles, I think.
Well, I'm a big Arizona Cardinals fan. I want the Cardinals to beat the Jets. I want the Jets to continue on that losing streak right to Trevor Lawrence. So we're out. Go ahead.
No, just go ahead and fail upward. That's the most. I think
tank for Trevor.
So bad. I think that's the best we can ask for right now.
Yeah. Also, like, I mean, so I do think Trevor Lawrence is fantastic, but people got to fuck off with this like early quarterback talk all the time. They're like, we're switching gears to football for like 1 second, but like draft analysts and people who write for football for a living are the worst because they overhype almost everything in the draft. Like, so in reality, in the past, like 20 years, 30 years, 20 years, I would say, there have been two can't miss quarterback prospects. Only 2. Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. That's it. There has been no one else. Yet, holy fucking shit, every time, shockingly, every time somebody comes up, they're like, oh, this guy, Jameis Winston. Oh, look at this guy, Marcus Mariota, Carson Wentz. Like, every fucking time. And like
Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. Like, you get these guys, and there are doubts about those guys, and I get it, but like, and I don't blame the people writing about it, because their job is to sell the draft. And you don't sell the draft with a stud offensive lineman. And you don't sell the draft by saying, hey, this guy's okay, but he might be a starter, but nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear that the guy that they pick is going to revolutionize their franchise. So the other day I was reading this thing, and they're like, if the Jets get the first pick, they can't pass on Trevor Lawrence. He's a first generation. He's a once in a generation player like Andrew Luck and Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. You are so fucking dumb if you're going to tell me that after 4 games, you think Joe Burrow is a generational talent. Because you know how I know that? Because 2 years ago, everyone was saying Baker Mayfield was the same thing because he had a quarter of a season under his belt. It is insane. The quick judgment. Andrew Luck, 100%. Andrew Luck was a guy that I think, if he was on a better managed team, probably could have won multiple Super Bowls. It's always like when I look at Aaron Rodgers, if Aaron Rodgers didn't have Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers would have 3 Super Bowls, because Mike McCarthy was a awful, awful coach. And those Packers teams were some of the best teams offensively I've ever seen. But you look at the way they talk about some of these players, and it's like, holy shit. I mean, it happens every year. Sam Bradford in 2010, Terry Bradshaw would be like, I think Sam Bradford's going to be like he had been drafted. He had a good first year, and they're like, I think he's going to be the guy. And like, they do this all the time. People have a minor thing, and then like they're so inconsistent. It's such bullshit. Long rant. Sorry. Long story short.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. My Giants went through that with Danny Dimes, where he won 2 games, and all of a sudden he's the king of New York. And I'm like, guys, let's slow that down. And guess what? He hasn't won a game since. So
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they do it like all the time. It's insane. But that said, I do think Trevor Lawrence could be that type of guy. And I know what I just said like contradicts what I'm saying now, but I do think he seems like he could be that type of guy. Okay, let's get back to SmackDown and Raw. So I think the drafts have gotten better. And I haven't even watched SmackDown. I have a 4-month-old baby, so my watching time has been cut down. Patrick, did you see the show? Did you see how like people reacted, like how they presented it this year?
No, I did not. I have not watched SmackDown. I know the next round is going to be on Raw this week, but I haven't had a chance to actually watch the show. I do have the results pulled up, and overall, it doesn't look like too much has changed. Drew stayed on Raw. Roman stayed on SmackDown.
Yeah. So here's what I liked. Here, like. It's I say I like this stuff, but this is like basic functionality stuff. Like your first 2 picks are going to be your champions, right? like duh. Like and I'm not saying like that's stupid. I'm saying like good. I'm glad they did that, because if I need a champion, right? Otherwise, like if you pick both, then like one show essentially ceases to exist because there's no point for it to happen. So like the fact that they like, oh, we'll go with I think Drew went first, right? And then Roman, Drew went to Raw and Roman went to SmackDown. Like that makes total sense. And like, then Asuka, they wanted their like women's champ, and then like, Seth is like probably the next biggest star. So like all that stuff like made sense and everything. And it, you really, really need to fresh up the Raw side of things, because you've got 2 options that we've been talking about for like, I want to say 3 months, but Drew has run through the entire heel roster, and WWE does an awful job of building up new baby faces and new heels. They're really bad at it. So like the fact is like, who did you have left for him to, like, if he beats Randy, and like, I hope Randy wins, because I'm almost wondering what else is there to do for Drew except for like a redemption story. Although I probably would have had Randy win in the last one with some trickery, but regardless, like, okay, you have Seth, but he kind of worked a program with Seth in April, so it's like, you know that happens. So like you need fresh opponents for him. Roman is in a much better situation because Roman's a heel, so he's got tons of fresh matchups. He's only wrestled Jey Uso. So like there's lots for Roman to do. I mean, and there's a seemingly actually good end game for Roman in this situation, and it's the one that was like proposed a few years ago, and everybody was like, oh, gross. And now because Roman's a heel, I think it makes a lot more sense. And that's The Rock. I think
Yeah.
if your end game with this like tribal chief storyline, which is super cool, actually, I think this is the best thing they've done with Roman in like since he was in the Shield, So if they do this tribal chief storyline and he takes out Jimmy and he takes out Jay and he's like just knocking everybody down, and then The Rock comes back and you have this big match and Roman goes over The Rock at Mania, you've actually helped Roman. Because so here's the deal. We complain the shit about Roman and justifiably because he has been shoved down everyone's throats forever. The thing is, they never really ever went all the way with Roman. I mean, it took way too long for them to pull the trigger on beating Brock. And granted, I'm not saying if he beat Brock, everything would have been better. It wouldn't have, because like we would have been like, oh, it's Super Cena too. But like he never like beat the guy, so they never really put him over anybody. Like yes, he did the SummerSlam 2018. He finally went over, but I think it was like far too late. I think Seth actually got the much better treatment with Brock than Roman did, and so like Roman's never really had a great moment, partially because they never turned him heel when they should have, partially because they shoved him down our throats too much, partially because he never went over Brock. But like all those factors like led to Roman like not being that big of a star in comparison to the fact that he's main evented like 5 consecutive WrestleManias or something insane, like more than Hogan, or like it's like an insane amount.
Yeah, absolutely. He was supposed to be like the heir apparent to John Cena, and I think they noticed that the fans were rejecting it almost instantly when people kind of figured out that's where it was going.
It was quicker.
And it's like, let's not have him win all the time. We'll make it a surprise when he wins, and then that just kind of cut his legs out from under him too.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, you and I agree there should never be one guy. That's a recipe for disaster. I mean, if Vince ran Game of Thrones, he'd be like, it's Jon Snow all the time, and he beats everybody, and no one ever gets up on him, and there will never be a point where Jon Snow's not on screen. That would be how he would have run Game of Thrones. Although maybe Vince's ending would have been better. Who knows? But, Roman, like Roman's had a lot of opportunities to be like the dude. And is he a star? Yeah. Does he sell merch? Yeah. But you look at and this is what I always said to people about John Cena. Is John Cena a big star now? Yes. John Cena is a big mainstream star. But what I would say to people for years in like 2011, 2012, and I think there came to a point like 2013, 2014, where John Cena did like ascend to the mainstream. I think it was the Rock feud that really did help him. But you look at John Cena, people are like, well, John Cena's a big star. I'm like, I fucking hope so. He got put over every human being on the fucking roster. Like, I would hope that John Cena would be a giant star, because if he's not, holy shit. And I and that's the thing. It's your input versus your output. So like Steve Austin went over he went over like Owen Hart and Shawn Michaels, and that was it. And then he was the biggest star in the industry. Like he went over like a good worker, and then like a star, a pretty big star, not the biggest star in history, but like a guy who like was a star, and then he was like the biggest star in like ever. Like Hulk Hogan, like I hate Hulk Hogan, but like, and Hulk Hogan went over everybody. That is true, but he also like made a fucking ton of money. Like John Cena went over everybody. And if you consider the guys that put him over and the guys that he worked with, is John Cena a great wrestler? Yes, but he had like 13 years of working with Triple H and Shawn Michaels and all the top stars of the era to hone that skill, and like almost a safety net underneath him where he would never get taken out of that spot. Like, yes, but I never felt that the output that John Cena gave them was commiserate with the investment that they put in him,
Yeah, and going back to what you said about Hogan and Austin, when they did get to the tippy top and became the top stars, they became a lot more selective of who those guys worked with. Like if you were working with Hogan, chances are you were a super heavyweight monster guy. Those got fed to Hogan on a silver platter. But if you were Demolition or some other tag team, or you were Jake Roberts or somebody like that, they tended to keep you away from Hogan and let you kind of get over on your own as a babyface. So some guys were protected in that respect. And Austin, it was kind of the same way. They, certain guys didn't get to work with Austin, partly because of his own decisions, like Jeff Jarrett.
Billy Gunn.
Billy Gunn is another great one. But guys were allowed to kind of get over and kind of stay separate from the top stars and kind of carve their own path and their own niche within the product. With Cena, it felt like if anybody even got over a little bit, like a Zack Ryder or something like that.
Or Dean Ambrose,
Cena was going to leech off of that like nobody's business. AJ Lee is another example. It's just, if it got over, it had to interact with Cena. Yep. And it's just like, he was like a leech.
It was a very Triple H thing to do. Like remember anytime something would get over, like Triple H would get like Christian got over as Captain Charisma. And he's like, I'm gonna have Batista squash you in 2 seconds and then come over and you'll be an afterthought. Or like Carlito's a thing, and Triple H just pushes him to the side and it's a very it was very subterfuge type way to do these things. But yeah, let's go back to the draft here. So round one, you got Drew McIntyre to Raw, Drew McIntyre, Asuka, and the Hurt Business. You get 7 people, all went to Raw, and then the remaining Shield members, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, went to SmackDown. Round 2, you had AJ Styles, Naomi. I don't know why I said it like that. And Nia Jackson, Shayna Baszler. Look at Raw. Raw is making some smart picks here, by the way. They're like, we're just going to fucking get all the tag teams and these stables, and we're going to have 800 more people than SmackDown is. So, good on Raw. SmackDown got Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. Round 3, Ricochet, Mandy Rose, and The Miz and John Morrison go to Raw. Once again, Raw really going for quantity here. SmackDown gets Jey Uso, and hey, SmackDown's finally starting to catch up here. They got Dominic and Rey Mysterio. They're like, you know what? We're gonna do this 2 pair of people. Raw says, fuck you. We're taking Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. And SmackDown says, hey, piss off. We're taking Big E. Now, why Raw didn't just say we're taking the entire New Day is a stupid thing, but okay.
Well, obviously they hate Big E. They don't see potential in Big E. That was what that meant.
Yeah. Then they get Dana Brooke and Angel Garza, where SmackDown gets Otis and Big E. So
it doesn't feel like a whole lot changed in this. Like the big things were obviously the New Day being split up and AJ and Seth basically switching places. But other than that, it pretty much stayed the same, it feels like.
Yeah. So I guess Drew can work with AJ. Did Drew already work with AJ? I don't know.
I don't believe so.
Okay, so there's something that he can do. And maybe we'll have more there.
Maybe Drew can defend the title in Raw Underground. They could do that.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe somebody didn't pick Dabaco. How could you let a can't miss like Dabaco happen? Once again, why is Raw Underground happening? Why are we like, hey, we need to have an underground fight thing where people fight a totally different style than the main thing that we do? Like, what is the kayfabe reason for this happening?
I don't know. That's, again, I would be okay with it if they actually thought the thing out and there was a purpose to it, but it just feels so random. Like, all of it, it's just like, it feels like an interruption to the show rather than a natural part of it.
Yeah, and I hate so Patrick and I and many other people actually. Well, we didn't come up with this, but you have a term for like what we call good WWE fans, and those are the fans that are like, if you're not watching the product correctly, which is always funny. Like, I always think it's hilarious that WWE is the only form of entertainment that if it's shitty, they're like, you're not watching it right. Like everybody else is so I'm playing the Avengers game on PlayStation 4, and like there's all sorts of bugs and like shitty things going on, and like Kotaku reaches out to them and they're like, we're really sorry, we're fixing blah 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 blah. And like when a season of a show is bad, they're like, we're gonna take a look at this and stuff. Vince is just like, there's so much negativity here. Like it's the only thing where like the fans are blamed for like shit being bad, and they're like, you just don't get it. Like it's not like Bertolt Brecht. It's like fucking WWE. Just take responsibility for your shitty writing. But anyway, so with Raw Underground and like Retribution and stuff, people act like they're like, oh, well, why do you need everything explained, or why does everybody need an explanation about this? I'm like, I mean, there's an aspect to mystery to things, like they're like in movies or like books or something, like mystery can like add an error to something, but like that's not what WWE's doing. They're just too lazy to think of that, and they're like blaming us on it now. So it's just like, I'm sorry you didn't do your homework on your like fake fighting show, but like if you don't want me to care about it that much, you're doing a great job on that end
then. Yeah, absolutely. It's oh my God, it's just a mess.
And then for those people who are like, well, if you complain about it, stop watching. I did. I don't watch this stuff for the most part. I'll talk about it because this show can't exist without it. But like for the most part, my actual watching time is like AEW or New Japan or like, I don't know, something where it's like, hey, holy shit, this is actually pro wrestling. I don't hate this stuff. It's just a certain format of it. It's like if there was like only one movie studio and they kept putting out like epic movie or like disaster movie or like all those shitty
movies.
Yeah. Those parody movies that they did for like 10 years. And you're like, man, movies are terrible. I hate movies. And then like another movie studio came out and you're like, and they released like, I don't know, something you like whatever it is, whether it's like the Avengers or the Matrix or like Schindler's List or whatever. And you're like, hey, these are good. Oh, I don't hate movies. I just hate this company that makes movies.
Yeah, pretty much. The most WWE I watch these days are obviously NXT and just watching old stuff on the network. That's kind of taking up a lot of my time. And yeah, that's really their best thing right now is the network and the library of stuff that's on there.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's a great value. I think it's like fantastic the amount of like content you get. Like, I think the network's like an amazing product. But I don't think their product is an amazing product. But speaking of products that we like, what did you think of the Chris Jericho 30th anniversary show?
That was a fun show. I enjoyed most of it start to finish. And the Jericho stuff I thought was fun. I liked all the little cameos that they put in there. Got me to like kind of pop for a bunch of the people that they got, both celebrities and old wrestlers. Like, oh, cool, that's Ultimo Dragon. And oh, even cooler, that's Slash.
Oh, Dennis Miller for some reason. Yeah, no, I thought it was, I thought that was super cool. I am so excited about this MJF Jericho stuff. I can't tell you how much fun it's been to watch this, because how many times, Patrick, have we sat down and watched an angle and know where it's going to go? We say, oh, well, the Hurt Business, they're going to like turn on this guy, or like, oh, we know that they're building to this match. And like, we always like kind of know. And when MJF like started to do his stuff with Jericho, like, so I think we kind of know where it's going now, right? I think everybody kind of gets that, like, MJF is either he's gonna take over, he's gonna kick Jericho out of the inner circle, or he's gonna like do like he's got. We're pretty much zoning in on that area now, but like the way this is unfolded has been like subtle and brilliant and like engaging. Like he comes out after he loses to Moxley and he's like, you know what, everybody else has got their little factions, and that's why I didn't win. So like great heel stuff right off the bat. And he's like, I'm looking for my wolf pack. And then he starts doing his tease with Jericho where they see each other and they're like, hey, sorry you lost to Orange Cassidy. Hey, sorry you lost to Moxley. And you're like, oh, it's just a fun bit. Like, it's just a little thing. It's like the thing they did after MJF turned on Cody and they had that segment. And then you come back the next week and he's like, oh, hey, like, why'd you call me a loser? Because we can watch the cameras, which is like, what a breath of fresh air. And then he does the bit with the jackets and you're like, okay, so this isn't just a one-off thing. This isn't just a tease. This is an actual ongoing thing that's paying off like months of storylines. And then I will say this, when they had Jericho at the end of that show, and I know nothing really happened at the end of the show, but when Jericho was out there and he was like, "Thank you, everybody." And MJF's music hit. I got total chills. I was like, "This is awesome." And he comes out, he does the rock bit. He does the bit where he's like, "I'm going to give you," I gave everybody jackets, although he did give Jericho jackets. And then he gives the picture of MJF. Jericho, Judas affects the clown. And then he's like, "Oh, hey, we're just kidding." He's like, "Oh, you got me." But it is such good tension. It's such good. It makes sense from a character standpoint. The motivation and the point of view of these characters is completely in line with what we've established so far. And like, I mean, I think next week, like MJF is going to do something, I think, right?
I don't know. That's the thing. I was kind of expecting something to happen, like them to, empty out their gun at the end of the show. Because, like you, when he came out, I was like, ooh, something cool's going to happen here. And then the show just kind of ended. It's like, wow, they're really dangling us along. But I like it. I'm very intrigued to see where
I like it too, because you got to remember, and this is Triple H has said this is his frustration with weekly television. You can't blow your load all at once. Now there's a push and pull you have to do with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to blow it all at once, but you also don't want nothing to happen ever, right? So you need to meter it out in the point where you're still engaging your audience while making sure you have story left to tell. So you look at this and it's like, could they have done a turn or something big here? They could have. They probably could have, but you're going against a vice presidential debate that did combined over all the networks 50 million viewers. So is this the best time to do it, or do you do it on the anniversary show of Dynamite? I don't know. So it's an interesting move. It's a calculated move. Next week is a stocked show. You've got the long-awaited Moxley Archer match, which, I mean, I loved their Texas Death Match, so I think this should be great. You have Cody and Orange Cassidy. You have the continued Young Buck saga. You have, like, AEW is rolling on all cylinders. Like, they have taken this pandemic in stride. They've at no point have you been like, you can track everything back through the pandemic and the storytelling still makes sense. There's confidence in what they're doing. There's confidence in these stars. It's like, and I don't want to sound like an old person when I say this, but it's like you're watching good territory wrestling. I mean that in the best possible way, because it's so precise, yet they're not out of touch with what their audience wants.
And I'm liking a lot of what I'm seeing right now. It's like, all right, I'm loving this Omega Hangman stuff. I'm loving the turn of the Bucks and where it's going to lead, and I'm intrigued in seeing where that all goes. Like we said, I'm loving the Jericho MJF stuff. The Cody Brody Lee stuff was really good. We got the nice payoff with that really good dog.
That was great match. Great match.
Awesome match. And they're doing really well for themselves.
I mean, when you look, here's the difference between AEW and WWE. And I'm not going to throw New Japan in there because New Japan doesn't do the heel face emotion stuff like WWE and AEW do. They're more sport focused. They're much more realistic. And that's great. I think New Japan Wrestling has like some of the best wrestling on the planet. I think they by far have the best worker on the planet in Kazuchika Okada. But WWE and AEW really rely on, I don't want to say New Japan doesn't rely on character storytelling because that's not fair. It's not true. But they don't rely on heel face alignments as much to tell their stories. And here's what I'm trying to get at. If you look at the Kenny Omega and Hangman Page stuff. There's so many times where you see a WWE show or you see, whatever kind of wrestling show you want to see. And you're like, oh, that guy's the heels, that guy's the face. But I don't really feel for them. And Jim Cornette would tell you, well, you know what? That's because it's not real. It's not real. Like if kayfabe was a bigger thing, you would get behind these people and you would like them. And that sounds true until you realize that people have strong feelings about film, about TV shows. People really hated Ramsay Bolton. They knew that what Ramsay Bolton in Game of Thrones was doing wasn't real, but they hated him because they believed and they were engaged in the storytelling. People were really affected when Thanos did what he did at the end of Infinity War. They knew it really didn't happen. Hell, a lot of them knew it wasn't going to be permanent, but they were affected by it because they were engaged in the storytelling. I'm watching the Kenny Omega and Hangman Page stuff, and I appreciate Kenny Omega as a worker because I think he's a great worker. But man, oh man, do I legitimately want to see him get his head lariated off his shoulders, because they've engaged me in this storytelling. I have, and I think the most of the audience who, if you would have told them 2 years ago, hey, you're going to love Adam Page and you're going to hate Kenny Omega, they would have said, no way, Kenny Omega is such a great worker. But what they've done is they've made Kenny Omega into this insecure, elitist asshole, and they've made Hangman into this guy who has issues that his friends, who turned out to be huge assholes, have never been there for him. So everybody says, wow, not only is Hangman cool as fuck, but like he's a relatable, interesting human being. I feel bad for him. I support him and I want him to do well. And Kenny Omega is this like narcissist asshole. And you're like, I want to see you get your ass kicked. And now at the end of the day, I can still say Kenny Omega is a great wrestling performer. But when I'm watching the show, I can connect to that more emotionally than I could if there was bad wrestling storytelling going on.
And that's always the key. How long have we been saying for WWE that most of the good stuff that happens in WWE, it's the wrestlers having to make up for the shitty creative that they're given, and just going out there and having 4 and 5 star matches is like, that's really all you could really enjoy. It's just the wrestlers trying to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. But here it's like, it feels so much better when you actually care about what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so why don't we chat about kind of some of the big news that came this week, which was Candy Cartwright filed a $40 million lawsuit, $10 million each, against Matt Riddle, Gabe Sapolsky, Evolve, and WWE. The claims are that Matt Riddle sexually assaulted her without her consent, like sexually assaulted and obviously performed acts without consent. Gabe Sapolsky was aware of it since he was in charge of Evolve. They were culpable, and WWE was aware of it, and they took her off bookings. This is an interesting thing to talk about because it's very difficult to talk about lawsuits and give opinions on them because it's personal, because we have no fucking clue what happened, because of optics, and we're two white dudes talking about this, so there's things where you definitely have to tread carefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk about some interesting facts about it.
Okay.
An email came out the other day. I think Candy Cartwright released it, that said that WWE, she had bookings post January 31st, 2020. And they were like, oh, there's another talent and like, we can't use you there. So there is truth that she was pulled from her booking. Now, that doesn't prove that Matt Riddle's like that supports both stories, right? It could be that Matt Riddle was like, hey, I don't want her around, blah, 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 blah. Or it could be that like Candy Cartwright was stalking Matt Riddle and he's like, this person's harming my family and I had an affair with her, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll get her way. So like, it doesn't really support any of the story, but it's like, it is a thing that supports a charge that's in there. So there's that. Two, Dave Meltzer pointed this out. She said that Gabe took her off of bookings after the same amount of time frame in Evolve. And that has actually been proven false, because after she worked some shows in March, right before the pandemic for Evolve, right before they closed up. So that's actually not true. So quite frankly, Patrick and I are not here to say, we think this is true or we think this is false. What we are here to say is this is a huge lawsuit and I wonder how it will proceed. Is WWE going to stick by Riddle? Are they going to cut bait? Normally when things like this happens, I mean, WWE and Riddle are named in the suit together. So I'm inclined to believe that they're going to stay with him and like fight this on his behalf.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out. This is very intriguing. Normally when a lawsuit is this big, the first move, at least my understanding, is to try and settle out of court. And
yes.
Yeah, that's normally move number one. It's like, all right, what do we have to pay you to make this go away? And get this out of the headlines. So that
Yeah.
might be what happens here, but again, I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah. So and I want to point out, as my wife always reminds me, settling does not mean an admission of guilt. Settling simply means that you settle. Do you agree to the person? Sometimes companies will say, like, well, we don't agree this is true, but the optics and the time frame is not going to be beneficial for us, so let's just end this. Companies will decide that. It's not an admission of guilt. It can be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Like companies that people who are guilty do settle, and people and companies who are innocent do settle. So there is that to note. But I mean, this is it's probably not press that WWE wants in an era where they're claiming to like stomp on workers' rights, not deal with women very well. They have a long culture of bullying. This is the long and the short of it is people do not WWE does not want this as a story right now, and it's a very large story.
Yeah, and I'm sure Matt Riddle's a guy that they were going to invest in big time. I don't know what their ultimate plans were for him, but you and I both said, it's like, dude, this guy's money. Like the way he works, his legitimate background and everything. This guy's worth investing in, and you really don't want to have something like this come out about anybody that you're going to put a lot of money and time into.
And I continue to think Riddle is money. I think Riddle's a big star. I think I always feel it was too bad that AEW came in to be existence after he had signed, because I think he would have been a key guy for them. But there's we'll see, because this is a challenge for them, for him, for Gabe, for everyone. So we'll see how that goes. Last thing I wanted to talk about, this isn't in the news or anything, and this is like, I mean, to a degree, people are going to see this on the title and be like, "Whoa, let's listen to that," because it sounds like he's going there. Because and part of me, wants like to intrigue people, but I do want to have a discussion about this, because I've been talking to people about this, and I want to get your opinion on it, because circumstances have changed. Do you think we've talked about investment and output from performers, and in a lot of cases, you look at a guy like Brock Lesnar, and we've talked about Brock. Like if AEW signed him, you probably wouldn't make your money back with him. So there's very few free agents in this business that really are needle movers. I would say Brock. I would say Batista. If he would wrestle again. Obviously The Rock doesn't really count, because he's so expensive and huge. And the last name would be CM Punk. And I come back to this every once in a while, because to me it's just such an interesting, it's been an interesting situation since All Out 2019. But Patrick, knowing what we know now with the post UFC fights, the WWE backstage thing, do you think, and of course this is not saying CM Punk would do this, because so far he has indicated that he will not do this, but if AEW signs CM Punk for whatever his asking price, which we could assume would be high, do you think the benefit would be there for them?
I think a lot of people would be interested in seeing CM Punk get back in the ring for professional wrestling. I think what you saw with the UFC fights, yes, he moved the needle, and he got some pretty big buy rates for UFC, just for the intrigue of him stepping inside the ring. He ultimately failed as a fighter, obviously, but and that may have sullied him a little bit. Maybe the WWE backstage thing sullied him a little bit, because he went back when he said he never would, and worked on this C-rate WWE show that almost nobody watched and got canceled. So maybe he's not as intriguing as he once was because of all of that. But I still think if they got Punk, and even just to come back for one big match, I think it would be a huge benefit to AEW if they did.
Yeah. So because initially, I'm actually one of the people that don't think the UFC fights hurt Punk in a professional wrestling capacity. What I did think, and I have since changed my tune on that to a slightly different version of this, what I did think was that WWE backstage did hurt him. because he came back and like the viewers were small and like, you know, it wasn't like, I mean, it was bigger than what they had been doing, but it wasn't a big deal. I've since changed that thought. I do think WWE backstage hurt him, but I don't think it was because of the viewership. I think you know, like Fox Sports Network is not a big FS1, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not a big channel. It was on 11 p.m. and I don't think anyone was interested in a talk show, and I don't think anyone was really interested in hearing CM Punk talk about pro wrestling. In the way I do think it hurt him was the fact that he was so vocal about it, and then he went back immediately for like big money. And yeah, I know he's like, oh, I'm an employee for Fox, not WWE. I'm like, yes, you are an employee of Fox who has a relationship with WWE, and your job is to talk about WWE. So there's that. It's a WWE show. So you're an employee of Fox on a WWE show. So, okay, you're technically correct, but also full of shit. So I think that hurt him. And initially I was thinking, well, you know what? That hurts his like rebel persona. That like, you know, for years CM Punk was like a chant that people would do whenever they were like, this sucks. WWE sucks. Let's chant CM Punk. Now they chant AEW because AEW is the not WWE in the same way that CM Punk was the not WWE. And I was thinking, I was like, well, you know, that hurts Punk so much because he's like, you know, his character is such a rebel and like, you know, but then I thought about that for like more than a few minutes and I was like, well, wait a second. Is his character a rebel? Because think about it. Like, what are Punk's greatest achievements in wrestling? It's his ROH run, which is where he signed a contract on the ROH title and was a corporate sellout. That was his character, he was a corporate sellout. Mm-hmm. It was his straight edge society thing where he was like this sinister messiah who thought he was better than everyone. And it was the pipe bomb, but people always forget that the payoff to the pipe bomb was that it was that promo to The Rock where he admitted it was all a ploy. It was a total, it was total bullshit to get him to the top of the card. So like, part of me was thinking like, is there value of like, let's say Jericho's turning heel. Is there value in CM Punk as a top tier heel for like, I'm not talking about, oh, he comes out in Chicago and everybody cheers him. I'm saying he comes out as the guy who's full of shit, the guy who went back to WWE after all that, the guy who fucked over Colt Cabana, the guy like, is there like, he kind of is not what AEW fans like want to want, you know? So I'm just wondering if there's value there. And I'm also wondering if after the WWE thing, if after the fact that Raw has had record drops and they've stabilized a little bit with the Thunderdome and some of the things that they've done lately, but like Vince never called him. He never called him. And Vince gets desperate. Vince brought back Shawn Michaels and Christian and Big Show and Ric Flair and all the old standards. So he was trying to do whatever he could to pop ratings, and he never even tried CM Punk. And to me, that like, does Punk at some point say like, well, I'm never getting anything for that. But like, and everybody says, well, you know, maybe he just doesn't want to do wrestling. Well, yeah, but then he did a wrestling talk show and he said multiple times, well, I'll never say no. And like, blah, 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 blah. So like he doesn't not want to do wrestling. There's like some weird preference there that he's not been honest about, you know?
Yeah, and Punk is kind of a strange dude. Like, if you've ever seen him in interviews, I don't know what it is about his personality, but
let's be honest, he's an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. And that was part of his appeal for years, but it's like, oh wow, he really is kind of like this. But I can't imagine dealing with him backstage at a wrestling show, but it's he's such an oddball personality that I don't know, like, is that something that AEW even wants to deal with? Have there been people in AEW that's like, yeah, we dealt with Punk and he's an asshole, dude, let's not bring that dude on board? I don't know. I have no idea.
So that's the weirdest thing to me, because he was friends with all those guys, right? We know he was close friends with Cody. We know he was friends with the Bucks. He even said, if you go back and listen to his Art of Wrestling podcast, he's like, well, I don't know if I'll come back to WWE. Maybe I'll do some indie show somewhere with the Young Bucks. Like, that's something he actually says. And like, so it's so weird to me that he's like, Well, all my friends, it'd be like, Patrick, it'd be like if you and I did a podcast and then like we had a boss or something and I hated, well, actually, we kind of did have this situation, but, let's say we didn't own this podcast and like I hated the boss. I'm like, I'm doing podcasting, blah, 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 blah. And then you're like a year later, you're like, Erik, guess what? I got this podcast. It's really cool. We got a spot here and like I got these guests and I'm like, I don't know about that. That would be weird, especially if I didn't give you a reason. And like his reasons are like weird as shit. Like they didn't talk to me in person. And then Cody's like, nope, we had coffee with you. So like, is it that you like weren't treated as a big of a star? Like there's so many things here. Is he a secret WWE mark? Like, does he like only want to deal with them? Is he annoyed that the Young Bucks and Cody are in EVP positions? And he's like, these guys are below me. I can't believe they're like doing this stuff. Is it like, did he think that AEW was going to become TNA 2.0? Like, does he legit just hate wrestling, even though he continually profits off of it by talking about it and having Q&A sessions everywhere and doing MMA stuff, which is also kind of pro wrestling? Like, that's really freaking weird to me. It's just weird.
He's a weird dude. Like, the more you see of him especially outside of the WWE system, it's like, wow, this guy is really weird. He's just
remember all the things he hated about WWE? He's like, man, I hated that. I hated the guys up top, like Triple H and stuff. I hated the fact that the schedule was so bad. I hated that I had a bunch of script writers. And then his friends that he likes say, hey, we're starting a promotion. And you only have to wrestle 1 day a week. And probably less, because you probably wouldn't be wrestling every week. And there are no script writers. You can write your own stuff. And he's like, I don't know. None of that's appealing to me.
Well, Roman Reigns recently said in an interview that he doesn't like CM Punk. He doesn't know a lot of people that did, but he's willing to work with him. So, because of course Roman has to throw that little bit of diplomacy out there. But it was really funny to hear like a top WWE guy. It's like, I didn't like him.
I mean, I would say I would legitimately say, and like, I don't blame CM Punk for this, but I would say CM Punk kind of ruined Roman's career to a point.
You got to make Roman look really strong.
Yeah. For those of you who didn't listen to the podcast like 6 years ago or whatever it was, the thing that like really kicked it up a notch with Roman like not having the support of the fans was the Art of Wrestling podcast, which everybody listened to. It kind of, I would say, kicked off like the modern era of like everyone has a podcast, which is not us. Patrick and I have been doing this show in one form or another since 2004. So fuck off saying that we're like on the back of anyone. But he says in that, like, everybody just kept saying, keep Roman strong. And it became like a meme, and it became like it confirmed everything that everybody thought. They're like, oh, okay. So they like, even this far back, they were like, just this is going to be the world champion for 90 years. And everybody had Cena flashbacks and they like revolted. And like, I mean, I don't blame Roman for being mad at Punk for that. I don't blame Punk for saying that. I blame WWE for being so fucking myopic that they're like, yeah, let's make sure that everyone in the company knows that no matter what anyone does for the next 2 years, this guy is the guy. Like, can you imagine that? Like, if WWE 96 and 97 was run like it was then and now and stuff, they would have been like, well, this Steve Austin guy's really hot, but yeah, this Mark Marrow guy. I mean, we are all in on Mark fucking Marrow. We got to put this Steve Austin guy to the side, which, by the way, they did for like 5 months. There was a whole summer. Actually, the one thing I'll give them a break on that, because back then WWE taped episodes like they taped like 70 episodes at once. So like if like King of the Ring 96 happens in like late June, and then there's like there basically was 2 tapings between that. There was the Seattle Key Arena tapings that like went through July, where Shawn Michaels and Ahmed Johnson had their epic feud with the Smoking Guns. And then there was, I want to say, how weird is it that I know where all the tapings are for each of these? But like, then there's the Wheeling, West Virginia tapings. Those are in September. I can't remember what the August ones are. but it doesn't matter. Anyway, like, so there was like 2 tapings, and then they started to be like, hey, you can talk shit about Bret Hart, and like, we'll make you the guy. So like, like I've always been the one that says like, it didn't immediately happen. Like, it didn't go from Austin 316 to this, the Austin era has culminated. There was a long time, but I will go back on the fact that it was only 2 days of tapings in between the point where they started letting Steve Austin do shit.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think back on that like late 90s period, and it felt like if you got over, they would push you. Like, even if it was something small like Crash Holly, who got over with the Houdini of hardcore bit, and they let him carve out his own little niche on the show. It's like they rewarded you if you got crowd reactions and actually got over. And now it just feels like, no, we pick them. Fans don't pick them, we do. And that's it forever and ever.
When would you say, can you mark in your mind the point in which the attitude, when they stopped like saying, hey, you got over, you can be a superstar?
I don't want to say Cena, because Cena did legitimately get over initially. Probably, and I hate to say it because I ended up liking him quite a bit, but probably Batista, because he it was like they just anointed him and that was it. They didn't really give him much of a chance to get over or anything like that. It felt like they just picked him out of the blue.
Okay, so I'm going to go 5 years earlier.
Okay.
I'm going to say April, I don't know the date, but April 2000. When they did the Jericho Triple H thing.
Yeah.
Jericho beat Triple H, and then they reversed it and gave the title back to Triple H. If you are a company that really cares about where things are going, you pull an audible on that. You like do something with that and like change shit, because it was such a big thing. And like, and let's say you have Triple H get the title back. You pump up Jericho for the next like little bit. And to a degree they did. When The Rock left, they're like, we'll have these 2 shows with Jericho. Well, he's like the top guy and has to wrestle like 3 times in one night. But they never did that. They had Jericho lose to Kurt Angle in the King of the Ring. They had him lose to Chris Benoit. They had him lose to Angle. They had him lose to Triple H at the Last Man Standing. Everybody loves that match and they think it's a great match, and it is a great match, but it's like sandwiched in between Jericho losing forever. And like it's just like, to me it was like, we're all full up here. We don't need anyone else. We're good. Like Triple H and The Rock and Steve Austin and Undertaker and stuff, there were spots at the top, but once those spots get filled, then they're like, nope, we're full. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that episode of Raw, because I remember watching that, and that first segment, honest to God, one of the best pieces of WWE television ever produced. And then they squandered it by the end of the show, because not only did they have Jericho give the title back, which that could have worked if they'd had a long-term game plan to get Triple H and Jericho for the title on pay-per-view, which they didn't. But not only that, and people forget this part, but Jericho lost to Triple H later in that same show.
Yep, in the 6-man.
Yeah, and it's like, why would you do that?
It's because
didn't make any sense.
So here's the thing. They're like, well, we got to have Triple H get his heat back. I'm like, Triple H got his heat back. He got the title back. That's all you need. You can have Jericho like beat the shit out of him now because Triple H has the title. That's the Ric Flair philosophy, right? It's the Ric Flair. They did it later with Shawn Michaels, and they've done it. Like, they actually did it with Jericho and AEW. But like, as long as you have the belt, you're coming out on top. And like, if you're getting away with it, like, it's fine. Like, so that was odd. And the fact is, like, the idea was like, well, we want to get the belt on Rock. Well, I mean, I guess, but then maybe have Jericho go over Triple. I don't know. They never made Jericho the star he probably should have been at that point.
Yeah,
and I know Jericho will always say, "Well, I wasn't really a top guy," and so I'm like, I mean, yeah, okay, but like, maybe you were. Maybe if you didn't lose to everyone.
Well, if you read Jericho's book, he also had a ton of heat back then too. That was another thing that was like, because apparently Vince hated him, yes, and Triple H wasn't his biggest fan either. And apparently he was just the most hated guy in the WWE locker room. Because keep in mind, this was during the Monday Night Wars period, and if you had the stink of WCW on you, they hated you from the get-go. You had to kind of win them over.
Yeah. It'd be like, it's so funny because Jericho's favorite wrestler was Shawn Michaels, And he was repaid for that by having every one of Shawn Michaels' friends hate him and try to fuck with his career in both companies. Scott Hall will bully you. Kevin Nash will bury you. And then you go over the other side and Triple H is like, don't worry, I'll take it from here, buds.
Yeah, and he's still around now.
Meanwhile, also, have you ever heard of you've heard the story after Jericho? Remember when he first came and he like cut promos on everyone, like on Austin and like Rock and Undertaker and stuff?
Yeah, that infamous Undertaker promo, which was like one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Jericho's like whole bit was he was just like taking everybody down like a notch on the mic, and he called Undertaker's shitty, boring promo like shitty and boring. And then he goes backstage, and Shawn Michaels, who's like on some pills, I'm assuming, was like, "You just called the locker room leader boring. You're an asshole." I'm like, you mean on the fake fucking show where this stuff is scripted and approved ahead of time, you idiot? Like,
also, Shawn Michaels calling anybody out for being a dick on the microphone is just
I would never ever insult anyone on a microphone about extramarital affairs that didn't happen. I say this as Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler, but also Shawn, fuck off.
Jesus. But yeah, I think that was part of that whole WCW mindset where it's like, if you came from WCW, you were instantly inferior. Other guys kind of got around that. But even like when Benoit and Eddie and all those guys defected, like initially, like their first show in, they lost all their matches.
Yeah, I know.
And it's like, why would you, what way is that to promote somebody? I don't understand that.
No, well, and it's always like the balancing act, right? You want to get your new stars over, but you also don't want to make them look like they're way better than your stars. But like, I don't know, then maybe don't book them against your top star if you don't want to. Like, Benoit didn't have to wrestle Triple H on the first show,
Yeah. It's I don't know, it's just weird and crazy.
Yeah. All right. I think that's about all for today. Everybody, once again, thank you. Like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Let us know how you're feeling. Thoughts on any of the things we talked about today. Do you think Punk's full of shit? Do you think that the draft is being done well in WWE? Whatever your thoughts on today's episode, just let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from them. And but for right now, I'm Erik Clancy alongside Patrick Kelley, and we are
signing off.